Jake Morrison wiped his greasy hands on his coveralls and looked up at the sky. Something was blocking out the sun over his small garage in Lima, Ohio. The thing was huge and silver, floating in the air like a metal cloud. It made no sound yet. "Oh, well, that's new," Jake said to himself. He had been fixing cars for 20 years, but he had never seen anything like this. Before Dot, the giant ship just sat there in the sky. Other people started coming out of their houses and stores. Everyone was pointing and talking. Some people were taking pictures with their phones. Jake just stood there and stared. Then his radio started making weird noises. Not music or talk. Shows, but strange beeping sounds. Jake walked over and turned up the volume. The beeping stopped, and a voice came through. It did not sound human. "Attention, primitive species of the third planet. This is Admiral Zixthara of the Galactic Empire. Your world has been selected for immediate conquest and integration. You will surrender all weapons and submit to Empire rule. Resistance is pointless. Your technology is inferior. Your species is weak. Prepare for boarding." Jake scratched his head. He looked around at his garage. There were tools everywhere, car parts scattered on the floor, and an old coffee pot that had been making terrible coffee for 10 years. He picked up his radio and pressed the talk button. Hello there. This is Jake. I run a garage here in Lima. Are you the folks with the big ship up there?" There was silence for a moment. Then the alien voice came back, sounding confused. "You? You are responding to our conquest announcement?" "Yeah, I heard you. Listen, I don't know about all that conquest stuff, but I couldn't help but notice your ship up there. Is that thing running hot? I can see heat waves coming off the back end from down here." More silence. Jake could hear other voices talking in the background, but he could not understand what they were saying. "What do you mean, running hot?" "Your engines, buddy. They're overheating. See that shimmer in the air behind your ship? That's waste heat. You're burning way too much fuel and putting stress on your systems. I bet your engine room is hotter than a pizza oven right now." Jake heard more talking in the background. The voices sounded worried now. "How do you know about our engines?" "Same way I know about car engines. Heat, fuel, moving parts. It's all the same basic idea, just bigger. I've been fixing engines since I was 12. Your ship is running about as smooth as my neighbor's old truck, and that thing sounds like a dying cow." The alien admiral was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, he sounded less sure of himself. "You claim you can repair our engines?" "Well, I'd have to take a look first. But yeah, probably. Most engine problems are pretty basic. Wrong fuel. Mix, clogged filters, warm parts. Nothing too fancy. I could probably get you running 30% more efficient easy. This is not how conquest usually proceeds." Jake laughed. "I don't know much about conquering, but I know a lot about engines. Tell you what, you let me come up and take a look, and I'll fix whatever's wrong. Won't cost you much. $50 and a case of beer ought to cover it. 50 bucks. Dollars, money, and beer. You know, for after work. It's hot down here, and working on engines is thirsty work." There was a lot of talking in the background now. It sounded like arguing. Finally, the admiral spoke again. "You ... You wish to come aboard our vessel?" "Sure, if that's where the engine is. How else am I going to fix it? But ... But we are here to conquer your world." "Yeah, you mentioned that. But your engine is still running hot. That's going to be a problem whether you're conquering or just visiting. Might as well fix it while I'm here." 20 minutes later, a small ship came down from the big one. It was shiny and smooth, with no wheels or visible engines. It landed in the empty lot next to Jake's garage. A door opened, and 3 aliens came out. They were tall and thin, with blue skin and 4 arms each. They wore fancy uniforms covered in medals and symbols. They looked very serious and important. They also looked very confused. "You are the one called Jake?" asked the first alien. "That's me. You guys are the engine trouble?" "We are Commander Veltar, Chief Engineer Nix Pole, and Technician Grathen. We have come to ... to escort you to our ship." "Great. Let me grab my tools." Jake went into his garage and came back with a big toolbox and a small cooler. The alien stared at the toolbox like it might explode. "What is in that container?" "Tools. Wrenches, screwdrivers, that sort of thing." "Oh, and some WD-40. That stuff fixes everything. And this cooler has sandwiches and soda. I get hungry when I work." The aliens looked at each other. They seemed to be having a silent conversation. Finally, Commander Veltar spoke. "Very well. Please follow us." The small ship was cramped but comfortable. Jake sat in a seat that was too big for him and looked out the window as they flew up to the big ship. It was even more huge up close. Jake could see the engines now, and he shook his head. "No wonder. You're running hot. Those exhaust ports are way too small. You're choking your own engines." The alien stared at him. Jake opened his cooler and pulled out a sandwich. "Anyone want half a ham sandwich? It's going to be a long day." 3 days later, Alex Carter drove up to Jake's garage in a government car. He had been sent from Washington to handle what everyone was calling the alien situation. Alex worked for the State Department, but nobody had ever trained him for. Talking to aliens who wanted to conquer Earth. Jake was lying under the hood of an old pickup truck when Alex arrived. There were alien parts scattered around the garage, mixed in with regular car parts. The aliens had given Jake some of their broken equipment to study. "Mr. Morrison, I'm Alex Carter from the government. We need to talk." Jake slid out from under the truck. His face was covered in grease, both human and alien types. "Oh, hey. You hear about the space guys? They're pretty nice once you get to know them. Did you know they've never seen duct tape before?" Blew their minds. "Yes, about the aliens. We understand they want to conquer Earth. Well, they keep saying that, but mostly they just ask me questions about engines and Earth food. Their admiral really likes pizza. I ordered him 3 large pepperonis yesterday." Alex rubbed his forehead. This was not going like he had expected. "Mr. Morrison, this is a serious situation. We've sent a team to handle the formal negotiations. They should be here soon." An hour later, a van pulled up. Out came Betty Williams, who worked as an accountant for the IRS, and Steve Johnson, who sold insurance for a living. Behind them was Dr. Sam Foster, a retired college professor who had taught history. "Are these the aliens?" Betty asked, looking around the garage. "They're up in their big ship," Jake said. "Want me to call them down?" "Actually, we'd like to go." "Up there," Alex said. "We need to see their surrender documents." "Surrender documents?" "The papers they want us to sign to give up Earth." Jake laughed. "Oh, those. Yeah, they showed me those. It's like a phone book, but bigger. Really boring stuff." The aliens sent down their small ship to pick up the humans. Admiral Zixthara was waiting for them in a huge room filled with other aliens. The admiral was tall and silver, with 6 arms, and a head shaped like a triangle. He looked very official and scary. "Welcome, representatives of Earth. I am Admiral Zixthara. You are here to sign the documents of surrender." "Actually," said Alex, "we're here to review those documents first." The admiral seemed surprised. "Review them?" "But they are standard conquest forms. Every species signs them." "Well, we'd like to read them first, if that's okay." 2 hours later, the aliens brought in a cart full of papers. The documents were taller than Betty and written in languages that looked like drawings of angry spiders. "This is the Universal Conquest Treaty," the Admiral said proudly. "It has been used successfully on 847 worlds." Betty put on her reading glasses and started looking through the papers. She had brought a calculator and a notebook. Steve was taking pictures of every page. Dr. Foster was reading something that looked like the fine print. "Excuse me," Betty said after an hour. "Admiral, when was this document last updated?" "Updated?" "It was created by our finest legal minds 3,000 years ago. It is perfect. Well, I hate to tell you this, but there are some problems. For example, on page 2847, you claim that conquered worlds will pay 15% of their income in taxes. But on page 5692, you say it's 12%. And on page 8439, you say it's 20%. The Admiral looked confused. "That is ... that cannot be correct." "Also," Steve added, "according to page 15883, you promised to provide health insurance for all conquered species. But your policy numbers don't match any actual insurance companies. I checked." Dr. Foster looked up from his reading. "And this is interesting. On page 23,491, it says that if a conquered species can prove the conquering species made mistakes in the conquest documents, they can file a formal complaint." "A complaint?" the Admiral asked. "Yes, and if the complaint is valid, the conquered species can request a review of the entire conquest. It says so right here in section 847B. The Admiral turned to his assistants. They started talking in there. Alien language very fast. It sounded like they were arguing. "There must be some mistake," the Admiral said finally. "Oh, there are lots of mistakes," Betty said cheerfully. "I've found 247 math errors so far, and I'm only on page 3000. Also, you forgot to carry the 1 in most of your tax calculations. And," Steve added, "your conquest violates about 30 different galactic insurance policies. Did you know you're supposed to give 90 days notice before invading a planet? It's right here in the Interstellar Invasion Insurance Handbook." Dr. Foster was still reading. "Oh, and here's a good one. According to your own laws, any species that can improve your technology by more than 25% automatically gets upgraded to allied species status instead of conquered species." Jake, who had been quietly eating a sandwich, spoke up. "I improved their engines by 300%. Does that count?" All the aliens stared at him. "You improved our engines by how much?" The Admiral asked weakly. "About 300%, maybe more. Hard to say exactly. I also fixed their air conditioning and got their computer system running faster. Oh, and I showed them how to make coffee. They really like coffee." The Admiral sat down heavily in his chair. Around the room, other aliens were looking through copies of their own documents, pointing at pages, and talking in worried voices. "This is most unusual," the Admiral said. "Don't worry about it," Alex said kindly. "These kinds of paperwork problems happen all the time. We can help you sort it out. You can?" "Sure. Betty here is great with numbers, and Steve knows all about insurance. We'll get this straightened out." Betty was already making notes. "First thing we need to do is update all these tax calculations. Then we need to fix the insurance problems. Oh, and you'll need to file Form 27B to report the technology improvements." "Form 27B? It's right here on page 18,439. Anytime. Conquered species improves your stuff. You have to fill out Form 27B and send it to the Galactic Review Board." The Admiral looked like he was getting a headache. "How long will this take?" he asked. "Well," Steve said, looking at his notes, With all these problems, probably 6 months, maybe more. 6 months could be a year. These government forms are tricky. Oh, and you'll need to get approval from your home office before you can make any changes. The Admiral put his head in his hands. Around the room, his officers were still finding mistakes in the documents. Some of them looked like they might cry. Perhaps, the Admiral said quietly, we should discuss this over coffee. General Mike Anderson arrived at Jake's garage in a military truck. He had been sent by the Pentagon to assess the alien military threat. With him came Colonel Jennifer Adams, who was supposed to be the military liaison with the aliens. Mr. Morrison. General Anderson said, we need to understand these aliens' military capabilities. Jake was teaching 3 alien technicians how to change oil in a car. The aliens were taking very careful notes and asking lots of questions about motor oil viscosity. Oh, they're pretty advanced, Jake said. Their weapons can blow up whole planets, but they're not very good at using them. What do you mean? Well, yesterday they tried to demonstrate their laser cannons. Took them 3 hours to hit a barn from 50 feet away, and they missed the first 6 times. Colonel Adams frowned. That doesn't sound very advanced. Their technology is great, Jake explained, but they think too much. They run calculations for everything. Takes forever to make a decision. That afternoon, Admiral Zixthara came down to meet the military officers. He brought General Krexmol, who was the aliens' top military commander. General Krexmol looked very serious and had more medals than anyone could count. We propose a military exercise, General Krexmol announced. We will demonstrate our superior tactics and strategy. Then you will understand why resistance is futile. Sounds fair, General Anderson said. What kind of exercise? War games. We will simulate space battles using our advanced computers. Our best strategists against your best strategists. Okay, who do you want us to use? General Anderson looked around. The only people available were Tony Martinez, who delivered pizza. For Mario's Pizza Palace, Karen Smith, who organized the Neighborhood Watch program, and Danny Thompson, who was 17 years old and spent most of his time playing video games. These are your military strategists? General Krexmol asked, looking confused. Well, not exactly, General Anderson admitted, but they're what we have right now. This will be even easier than we thought, General Krexmol said to Admiral Zixthara. The aliens set up their war game simulation in Jake's garage. It was a holographic display that showed spaceships moving around in 3 dimensions. It looked very impressive and complicated. The scenario is simple, General Krexmol explained. You have a small fleet trying to break through our defensive line to reach a target. We have superior numbers and firepower. You cannot win. Tony looked at the display. So we just need to get past your ships to hit that target? Correct. But as you can see, we have positioned our forces to block every possible approach route. Tony studied the display for about 30 seconds. Can I move now? If you wish. But you should develop a strategy first. Perhaps spend some time analyzing our positions. Nah, I got it. Tony started moving his ships. Instead of trying to fight through the alien defensive line, he sent his ships in completely different directions. Where are you going? General Krexmol asked. The target is that way. Yeah, I know. But I'm not going straight there. That would take too long. Tony's ships flew around behind the alien positions, using planets and asteroids to hide. The alien general kept trying to turn his ships around to chase them, but Tony kept changing directions. This makes no tactical sense, General Krexmol complained. Sure it does. It's like delivering pizza. You don't always take the obvious route. Sometimes you have to go around traffic. Within 10 minutes, Tony's ships had reached the target while The alien fleet was still trying to figure out where he went. "This is impossible," General Krexmal said. "My turn," Karen said cheerfully. The next scenario was a planetary defense simulation. Karen was supposed to defend a planet with limited resources while the aliens attacked with overwhelming force. "This should be simple," General Krexmal said. "We have 10 times as many ships as you do." Karen looked at the simulation. She started organizing her defenses like she was planning a neighborhood barbecue. She put some ships here, some ships there, and started sending messages to all her units. "What are you doing?" the alien general asked. "Organizing everyone. Communication is very important. Everyone needs to know what everyone else is doing." Karen's ships started working together in ways the aliens had never seen. When the alien attack began, Karen's forces seemed to know exactly where every enemy ship was going. They shared information constantly and helped each other out. "How are you tracking all our movements?" General Krexmal demanded. "Oh, that's easy. Mrs. Patterson on Elm Street has binoculars and watches everything. And Bob from the corner store knows everyone's business. You just have to ask the right people." Karen's smaller force won by staying organized and working as a team. The alien fleet kept running into traps because Karen's ships warned each other about everything. "This is unacceptable," General Krexmal said. "My turn," Danny said excitedly. The final scenario was the most complex. Danny had to capture a heavily defended alien space station using only a few ships and limited weapons. Danny looked at the simulation for a few seconds. "Cool graphics. Is this like StarCraft or more like EVE Online? I do not understand those references. Video games. Strategy games? This looks like a really good one." Danny started moving his ships in patterns that made no sense to anyone watching. He sent single ships against huge enemy formations. He used his weakest units to attack the strongest defensive positions. "You are wasting your forces," General Krexmal said. "Nah, I'm just getting them in position. Watch this." Suddenly, all of Danny's seemingly random moves came together. His ships had been setting up a complex chain reaction. When he triggered it, the alien defensive systems started destroying each other. "How did you do that?" the alien general asked. Staring at the display, "It's a combo move. You get the enemy to shoot at your ships, but your ships aren't really there anymore, so the enemy ends up shooting their own stuff. That is not a real military tactic. It is in StarCraft. Works great against people who think too much." Danny captured the space station in under 5 minutes. General Krexmal looked at his own officers. They were all staring at the humans with expressions of complete confusion. "This is not how warfare is supposed to work," the alien general said weakly. "Different folks, different methods," General Anderson said diplomatically. "But they ignore all proper military doctrine. They use no recognized strategies. They make no logical sense." "Yeah, but they won," Jake pointed out. Colonel Adams was trying not to smile. "General Krexmal, would you like to try another simulation?" "No," the alien general said quickly. "I think we have seen enough." Admiral Zixthara had been watching everything with growing alarm. "Perhaps we should discuss terms of surrender." "Whose surrender?" General Anderson asked. The admiral looked around at his confused officers, then at the humans who were eating pizza and acting like they had just played video games instead of defeating the galaxy's most advanced military. "I am not entirely certain anymore," he admitted. The next week, a fancy alien ship landed near Jake's garage. It was painted in bright colors and covered with symbols that looked like art. Out stepped high culturalist Melandra, the Empire's top expert on converting primitive species to civilized galactic culture. Melandra was elegant and sophisticated. She wore flowing robes and spoke in a musical voice. With her came a team of alien artists, philosophers, and cultural experts. They had successfully brought civilization to 847 different worlds. "We are here to begin your cultural education," Melandra announced to the small crowd that had gathered. "Soon you will understand the beauty and wisdom of galactic civilization." Ambassador Helen Carter had arrived from Washington to handle the cultural exchange. She was a diplomat who spoke 12 languages and had studied alien cultures for years, even though she had never actually met any aliens before. "We're honored by your visit," Helen said politely. "We've arranged for some of our own cultural representatives to meet with you." Melandra looked around expectantly. She was ready to meet Earth's greatest artists, philosophers, and intellectuals. Instead, she met Bob Martinez, who ran a barbecue stand behind the gas station. Bob was wearing a grease-stained apron and a baseball cap that said, "Kiss the Cook." "Howdy," Bob said, wiping barbecue sauce off his hands before offering to shake Melandra's hand. "Heard you folks might be hungry. I got some ribs going if you're interested." Melandra stared at him. "You are Earth's cultural representative?" "Well, I make pretty good barbecue." "That's culture, right?" Next came Grace Thompson, a kindergarten teacher who had brought a box of art supplies and some cookies she had baked. She smiled at the aliens like they were new students on the first day of school. "Hello, everyone. I brought some finger paints and construction paper. I thought we could make some art together." Finally, there was Carl Jackson, who owned a small diner on the edge of town. Carl was 60 years old and had been making pies for most of his life. He was carrying a fresh apple pie that was still warm. "Welcome to Earth," Carl said simply. "Anyone want some pie?" Melandra looked at Ambassador Carter in confusion. "These are your cultural experts?" "They represent different aspects of human culture," Helen explained. "Bob represents our culinary traditions. Grace represents our educational methods, and Carl represents our hospitality. But where are your great thinkers? Your artists? Your philosophers?" "Well," Helen said, "these folks are pretty thoughtful." Melandra decided to begin with a demonstration of superior galactic culture. She had her team set up displays of advanced alien art, music, and literature. The art looked like geometric shapes that changed colors. The music sounded like wind chimes in a hurricane. The literature was written in mathematical formulas. "Behold," Melandra said proudly, "the highest achievements of galactic civilization. Art that speaks to the mathematical harmony of the universe. Music that resonates with cosmic frequencies. Literature that expresses pure logical thought." The humans looked at the displays politely. "That's nice," Bob said. "You folks must have worked hard on all that. Anyone hungry?" "I got pulled pork sandwiches." Several of the younger aliens looked interested, but Melandra frowned at them. "We do not eat during cultural presentations," she said sternly. "Why not?" Grace asked. "Food is part of culture too. And eating together is how people get to know each other. We are here to educate you, not to socialize." Carl set his pie down on a table. "Well, education works better when folks are comfortable. And pie makes everyone comfortable." The smell of fresh apple pie began to fill the air. Some of the alien cultural experts started looking toward the table. "Now," Melandra continued, trying to ignore the pie, "we will begin with an appreciation of galactic poetry. This poem expresses the mathematical relationship between space and time." She began reciting something that sounded like a computer reading a physics textbook. "That's interesting," Grace said when she finished. "Would you like to hear one of our poems? Children really like this one." Grace began reciting "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star." She used hand motions and encouraged everyone to sing along. By the second verse, half the alien cultural team was humming along. By the third verse, they were doing the hand motions too. Melandra looked horrified. "That is not sophisticated poetry." "No," Grace agreed, "but it's fun. and it makes people happy. Meanwhile, Bob had set up his barbecue grill. The smell of cooking meat was making everyone hungry, including the aliens. "I have never smelled anything like that," one alien philosopher whispered. "That's barbecue sauce," Bob explained. "Secret family recipe. Been working on it for 20 years. It smells wonderful. Want to try some? I got chicken, beef, and pork. All good." Within an hour, most of the alien cultural team was eating barbecue and asking Bob questions about his cooking methods. They were fascinated by the idea of slow cooking and flavoring meat with smoke. "This is remarkable," one alien artist said, sauce covering his face. "How do you achieve such complex flavors?" "Time and patience," Bob said. Good barbecue can't be rushed. Grace had organized an art project. Aliens and humans sat around tables, finger-painting pictures and talking about their families. The alien paintings looked nothing like their usual geometric art. Instead, they were painting flowers and trees and happy faces. "This is so relaxing," an alien poet said, carefully painting a blue sky. "I have not felt this peaceful in centuries." "Art should be peaceful," Grace said. "It should make you feel good." Carl was serving pie to anyone who wanted some. He had also made coffee, and the aliens were amazed by the taste. "This beverage is extraordinary," Melandra said, despite herself. She was on her third cup. "What do you call it?" "Coffee." "Been drinking it all my life. Goes great with pie. And this dessert ... it is incredible. How do you create such sweetness?" "Well, you start with good apples. Then you add some sugar, cinnamon, a little vanilla. The crust is the tricky part. You got to keep the butter cold." By the end of the day, the alien cultural team was completely different. They were relaxed, happy, and covered in barbecue sauce and paint. They were laughing and telling jokes and asking for recipes. Melandra sat at Carl's table, eating her fourth piece of pie and trying to understand what had happened. "This was not supposed to occur," she said to Ambassador Carter. "We came here to educate you about superior galactic culture." "And what did you learn?" Helen asked gently. Melandra looked around at her team. They were teaching Grace an alien song, while Bob showed them how to flip burgers. Carl was writing down his pie recipe for anyone who wanted it. "I learned that perhaps culture is not about sophistication," Melandra said slowly. "Perhaps it is about ... happiness." "That's very wise," Carl said, cutting her another piece of pie. "But what will I tell the Empire? How do I explain that your primitive culture is superior to ours?" "It's not superior," Grace said. "It's just different. And maybe that's okay. Different can be good," Bob added. "Makes life interesting." Melandra nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, different can be good." She looked at her team, who were now planning a combination art show and barbecue for the next day. "Very good indeed," she said, and asked Carl for the coffee recipe. 2 weeks later, a long black car pulled up to Jake's garage. Out stepped President Laura Davis, followed by her security team, and several important-looking people in suits. The President of the United States had come to tiny Lima, Ohio, to meet with aliens. Jake was in the middle of teaching Admiral Zixthara how to change a tire when the President arrived. The alien admiral was covered in grease and looking very confused about lug nuts. "Mr. President," Admiral Zixthara said, trying to clean his hands with a dirty rag. "I mean, President Davis, we were not expecting you." "I thought it was time we met officially," President Davis said with a smile. "I hear you've been having some interesting conversations with my people." With the President came Secretary of State Jim Wilson, who looked like he had not slept in days. Behind him were Dr. Maria Rodriguez, who studied different cultures, Judge Patricia Brown, who knew more about law than anyone, and Kevin Taylor, who understood money and economics. "We're here for the formal negotiations," Secretary Wilson said, opening a briefcase full of official documents. Admiral Zixthara looked nervous. "Ah, yes, the negotiations. Perhaps we should go aboard our ship for this." "Actually," President Davis said, "I like it here. This garage seems to be where everything important happens." Jake brought out folding chairs and set them up in a circle. Grace Thompson arrived with coffee and cookies. Bob Martinez started cooking hamburgers on his grill. Carl Jackson brought 2 apple pies, still warm from the oven. The Alien Supreme Council arrived in their fanciest ship. Overlord Keth Rozek was their leader, and he looked very impressive and scary. He was 12 feet tall with golden skin and eyes like diamonds. He wore robes covered in medals and symbols of power. "Greetings, primitive species," Overlord Keth Rozek said in a voice like thunder. "We are here to accept your surrender and welcome you into the Galactic Empire as a junior member species." "That's very kind of you," President Davis said politely. "But we have a different proposal." "A different proposal?" The Overlord looked confused. "You are in no position to make proposals. We are offering you a generous deal. You will have limited rights, basic protection, and the privilege of serving the Empire." Judge Brown opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "Actually, according to your own laws, we have several options. Dr. Rodriguez has been studying your legal system." Dr. Rodriguez stood up. "It's very interesting. Your Empire's founding documents say that any species that improves your technology, defeats your military, and influences your culture automatically qualifies for full partnership status. That is ridiculous," Overlord Keth Rozek said. "No species has ever done such things." "Well," Kevin Taylor said, consulting his notes, "let's see. Jake here improved your technology by 300%. Tony, Karen, and Danny defeated your military in war games. And Bob, Grace, and Carl have completely changed your cultural team's behavior. Those were just minor incidents." "Actually," Judge Brown sighed, "according to Galactic Law Code 847B, Section 23, any species that accomplishes all 3 things can petition for full Empire partnership. And according to Section 24, they can also petition to reorganize the Empire if they can prove it would benefit everyone." The Overlord stared at her. "Reorganize the Empire?" "Yes. Kevin has prepared an economic analysis showing how Earth's democratic system could improve galactic prosperity." Kevin opened his laptop and started showing charts and graphs. "Your current system wastes enormous resources on bureaucracy. You have 50,000 different forms just for basic trade permits. Your tax system is so complicated that nobody understands it, and your military spends more time filling out paperwork than actually protecting anyone." "But the Empire has existed for 10,000 years, the Overlord protested. "Yes, and according to your own economic records, you've been losing money for the last 8,000 years, Kevin said cheerfully. "Earth's system of democracy, free markets, and individual rights could increase galactic prosperity by about 4,000%. "That is impossible." "Actually, it's already happening," Dr. Rodriguez said. "We've been getting requests from planets throughout the Empire. They want to know how to set up Earth-style governments." "What?" Secretary Wilson pulled out a folder full of messages. "We've received formal requests from 847 different worlds. They want to leave the Empire and join Earth's Interplanetary Neighborhood Association." "What is this neighborhood association?" the Overlord asked weakly. "It's something we just made up," President Davis admitted. "But it sounds nice, doesn't it? We offer democratic government, free trade, worker protection, and unlimited coffee breaks." "Coffee breaks?" "Very important," Carl said, pouring coffee for everyone. "People work better when they're happy and well caffeinated." The Overlord sat down heavily in one of Jake's folding chairs. He looked around at his advisors who were all staring at their own feet. "This cannot be happening," he said quietly. "Oh, but it gets better," Judge Brown said, flipping through more papers. According to Galactic Law Code 1247C, if more than Hoy, 800 worlds petition to leave the Empire. The remaining government has to hold a referendum on major changes. A referendum? A vote. Everyone gets to choose what they want to do. Admiral Zixthara cleared his throat. "Overlord, we have already received 1,200 petitions. And more are coming in every hour." The Overlord put his head in his hands. "How did this happen?" "Well," Grace said kindly, "I think people just want to be happy. Your empire is very impressive, but it doesn't seem like much fun." "Fun?" the Overlord asked, looking up. "Yes, life should be enjoyable. People should look forward to getting up in the morning." Bob flipped a hamburger on his grill. "You want to know what I think? I think your empire is like a really fancy car with no gas. Looks great, but it doesn't go anywhere." "The empire spans 50,000 worlds," the Overlord said defensively. "Yeah, but are people happy?" Carl asked. "Do they wake up excited about their day? Do they enjoy their work? Do they have friends?" The Overlord was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he spoke very softly. "I do not know. I have never asked." "Well, that's your problem right there," Jake said, wiping his hands on a rag. "You got to ask people what they want. Can't fix something if you don't know what's broken." Kevin pulled out more charts. "Look, your empire could be amazing. You have incredible technology and smart people, but you're organized all wrong. Too much top-down control, not enough local decision-making." "What do you suggest?" "Democracy," President Davis said simply. "Let people vote for their leaders. Let them make decisions about their own lives. Give them rights and freedoms. But there would be chaos, disorder." "Not if you do it right," Secretary Wilson said. "We've been democratic for over 200 years. Sure, we argue a lot and sometimes make mistakes. But people are free and mostly happy." Dr. Rodriguez nodded. "And freedom makes people more creative, more productive, more willing to help each other." The Overlord looked around at the humans eating hamburgers and drinking coffee in Jake's garage. They looked relaxed and content. His own people, meanwhile, always seemed stressed and worried. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. Judge Brown smiled and pulled out a new document. "We propose a new galactic constitution, democratic governments for all worlds, free trade between planets, protection of individual rights, and regular barbecues." "Barbecues?" "Community gatherings," Bob explained. "Good food, good company, good times. Very important for keeping people happy." "We've also prepared an economic plan," Kevin added. "Convert your military ships into cargo vessels for trade. Turn your bureaucracy into a postal service. Transform your conquest fleets into a space pizza delivery network." "Pizza delivery?" "Very efficient logistics," Tony Martinez said. He had just arrived for lunch. "If you can deliver pizza in 30 minutes anywhere in the galaxy, you can deliver anything." The Overlord looked at his advisors again. They were nodding thoughtfully. "What about the Empire's traditions? Our history? Our pride? Keep the good stuff," Grace said. "Your art is beautiful when it's not just geometric shapes. Your music is lovely when it's not trying to sound like math. Your literature is interesting when people can actually read it. And your technology is amazing," Jake added. "Just needs better engines and more duct tape." Carl cut another piece of pie for the Overlord. "Look, nobody's saying your empire is bad. It's just not working very well anymore. Time for some changes." The Overlord ate the pie slowly. It was his 5th piece that day. "This dessert is extraordinary," he said. "That's because Carl makes it with love. Grace said. That's the secret ingredient Earth has that your empire doesn't. Love, caring about people, wanting them to be happy, doing things because they're right, not because they're required. The Overlord was quiet for a long time. Around him, humans and aliens were talking and laughing together. His own cultural team was teaching Grace's kindergarten class how to paint with their feet. Bob was showing alien chefs how to make barbecue sauce. Admiral Zixthara was helping Jake fix a broken lawn mower. Very well, the Overlord said finally. We accept your proposal. Just like that? President Davis asked, surprised. I am tired, the Overlord said. Tired of being feared instead of loved. Tired of ruling instead of serving. Tired of conquest instead of friendship. He stood up and extended his hand to President Davis. I would like to learn about this democracy, and about coffee, and about making people. Ah,